So it's still here, so I don't know what else can be wrong with it. I really don't want to take this thing apart to really diagnose it all. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So if you've been following my build recently, I've had a couple videos of me doing the timing belt service and all the different seals and the other services on the engine on this car. So I finally got it all back together, started the car up, and of course it ran for a little bit, and I got some check engine lights. So the first check engine light I got was, I think, 340 for cam gear position. So I cleared that code and it didn't come back immediately, so that was a good sign. The next code I got was like 1239 or something for the VVTi system, or was it 1349? I'll post it right here. So today what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run a little bit of diagnostics on the VVTi oil squirter and see if that's the issue. So that code I'm getting, a lot of people blame it on the filter down here and the lack of oil flow, but since I just changed that filter to a brand new filter, I don't think that's the issue. So I'm gonna go to the next thing that might be the issue, which is this guy right here. So I'm gonna take this whole thing out. It's just only 110mm that holds it. There's some oil that's gonna drip, so you gotta have a rag laying around to wipe that up. And then I'm going to ohm it out to check what the ohms are. I'm going to see if it flows correctly, and I'm actually going to apply some 12 volts to it to see if the solenoid actually actuates. That'll at least give me the process of elimination to see if that's the issue. I may try to open that up, make sure that filter was seated correctly when I put it in there again. But again, that's going to be another oily mess there, so I'm going to try to just diagnose those two. Hopefully that's the only thing that's causing the VVTi light on here, but we'll see. One of the signs you could check too, if you have oil in the plug, to see if there's something wrong with this, because sometimes this thing starts to leak internally. So that comes out pretty easily there. So we'll go take it over to the bench and see what's going on with it. Test it with the ohm meter and everything. That wasn't a good sign there was no oil dripping out of there, because usually this thing should have a bunch of oil in it. Oh man, I see something wrong right now. I see a gasket, looks like the form in place gasket material must have sucked up from when I was a form in place gasket I did. So maybe, hopefully that's the issue, but we'll just test it since we have it out. So we'll go ahead and set this to get like 7 or 8 ohms or something like that. So we're just setting it to 200. We'll just ohm it out. Getting around 8.0, 7.9. So that looks right from what I've read and seen online. So looks like there's ohms there. So I'm gonna go grab power supply and then hit it with 12 volts and see what if it clicks. So I just made this thing out of a computer power supply back in the day, because it's got 5 volts, it's got ground, it's got 12 volts. I installed some of these little things up here and I just use it to test all my stuff. I still have some leads here for wires if I ever need to just plug it up to some wires too coming out of there. So it's a good little thing using an old computer power supply. So I've got it hooked up. I don't think it's polarity sensitive, but you know, we'll see. So it's working. So that's a good sign there. So the solenoid's reacting to 12 volts, so that's good. So the next thing I'm going to test out is internally if there's anything wrong with it sliding back and forth. So I just take a little screwdriver, just kind of move it to see if I hear anything wrong with it. Sounds fine. So I'm wondering if that form in place gasket might have gotten stuck inside here in between the thing, and it might have stopped it from oscillating. I'll reinstall it now and clear the code and see what happens. All All right, booting this baby up. Let's check this engine code. So there we are. We got code P1349. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna clear it and see if it comes back immediately. It came back immediately yesterday when I was messing with this. So it's still here. So I don't know what else can be wrong with it. I really don't want to take this thing apart to really diagnose it all. So there was a little good sign there. I took the bolt out and it didn't drip any oil, but then when I moved that filter just a little bit with the screwdriver, it actually started leaking. So I'm hoping maybe something got lodged in there or the filter sat incorrectly for some reason and it blocked one of the passages. So I'm gonna just go ahead and put it back together and see if it still throws a code. So after putting all this back together, I was getting a high idle. I took it all apart just to see what was wrong. I assumed it was a vacuum leak. I saw this little rig here and I was studying the vacuum diagram and I thought this was, open to atmosphere, but it looks like somebody previously just rigged it with a piece of heat shrink onto here because it looks like the vacuum has been cut here and then it's cut on the other end. So I'll show you in a second up here. So this guy right here, I thought it was connected to the bladder underneath, but it looks like there's a piece of vacuum here that's hanging off of it, and it looks like the same cut on the other end. So I'm assuming that's where my leak was coming from. I guess before, whoever did that little heat shrink thing held enough where the vacuum didn't cause it, but I suspect that was causing my high RPM because this thing was idling at like 12 or 1300 RPM when it was warmed up. So I put a new piece of vacuum on there. I'm gonna reassemble this and hopefully this gets rid of that code. So I've been troubleshooting, clearing the code on this. I finally figured out my RPM issue. I had a leaking vacuum hose. So the hose back here for that little butterfly flap was disconnected. It was a rigged hose to begin with. I think the last person that messed with it cut it and then they put a piece of shrink wrap back on there to hold it, which I'm surprised it held, but I didn't know it needed to be reconnected. So I found out that it was disconnected. So I reconnected it with a new piece of hose. I started it up, it heated up fine, it RPM'd fine, idling and all that, and then all of a sudden the P1349 came back on again. So I just gave up. I decided to buy a new OCV valve, the oil control valve. I didn't want to spend the $100 for the OEM one just in case it wasn't the issue. So I just picked up this $20 one from Amazon. It's an aftermarket one. They sell these all over the place now for $20. This one had the most reviews on it, so I ended up just getting it because it had the most reviews. People actually bought it and used it and it worked. So I'm gonna swap that in and hopefully once it heats up, I solve my P1349 problem. Back to the drawing board. So I put this thing in, I let it warm up after I reset the code. And after about 10 minutes of warming up, it just went back to the same code again. So I don't know what the heck is going on. I suspect now maybe that form in place gasket, I used too much of it and it's blocking an oil passage. So I'm gonna have to take this thing apart now. That's the last thing I wanted to do. But I'm gonna have to just take this thing, the cam cap back off, clean that out, clean off that old form in place gasket, and hopefully that's the issue and I can fix this time. So I'll do that. I may take the cam apart too and just double check that everything in there, but I think it's working fine because I took the cam cap earlier off and I could spin the cam inside with no problem. So that leads me to believe that the gear and everything when I rebuilt that is fine. It might be just the oil passages over here. So I'll let this cool down, take it all apart and look at it. So back onto my VVTi code diagnostics. So I ended up taking everything apart, like I said, just to get to this guy again and check if there's any form in place gasket. So I've taken everything off, taken the tensioner for the timing belt, all the cam gears off. Now I'm just gonna pop this thing off and check if it's really that bad. See if I filled up any of the holes with form in place gasket when I went to ham on that. So I took it off and I can see I went a little bit right there on that because that was one of the little holes right there that it might be a little oil passage. I don't know if that one mattered or not. And it looks like these little oil passages along through the dowel pins got filled in, but I don't think that's consequential because that's actually the hole for the 10 millimeter that goes through it. Other than that, I don't really know or really see anything inside of here that's blocked or anything. It looks like all the passages are good. So I'm gonna just clean this up, put it back together with a little bit less form in place gasket, and we'll see what happens. Notice I got too much FPIG in this hole, and then it's full of sludge too. So you may wanna try to clean all this stuff out before you put it all back together, just to make sure that it's not sludge that's gonna clog up your VVTi oil solenoid and all that. And then in addition, don't go crazy on the form in place gasket like I did on here. So I had to take it all apart, clean it up, and I'm gonna put just enough back on there to work. So I cleaned out all the passages, cleaned out all the form in place gasket that I put in here. I made sure I stuck a paper clip or something in there to clean out all these holes, which are all oil passages for the valve. So what I discovered is, I think when I blocked those two little grooves right there, it kind of blocked the flow of oil through here, because that thing actually goes all the way through and it comes out right here a little bit past the dowel. So it comes out, the oil comes out right here, and then it also comes through across here. So there is oil flow going through and kind of passing through that. So I think when I blocked that off, it probably stopped some of the oil flow, or it increased the oil pressure inside the oil control valve and everything, and it must have thrown off the timing or whatever it is in the cam gear. So I'm gonna put it all back together with a lot less form in place gasket now. So my second shot at this form in place gasket, I just put it right there on the edge, and I flattened it out just so that it wouldn't squeeze as much and get in those oil passages, because we want to keep those clear, that clear. We don't want any of that stuff getting inside there, blocking that VVTi oil flow. So hopefully this works, and I didn't do this all for no reason. Looks like I found my problem right there, guys. Took apart the VVTi and I found a piece of form in place gasket. So that thing must have gotten inside and jammed the gears. So I probably wasn't hitting the correct time. Luckily I took that apart. I was gonna forego that for a second, but then I was like, screw it. I decided to take it apart. Luckily the O-ring is still inside the groove, so I don't have to worry about trying to stretch that back on, but I'm gonna take that out. The key to it is making sure that when you got the cam gear on, that it moves 30 degrees from top dead center to the side of free play. And with that little piece in there, oh shit, this thing popped out of place, so I gotta stretch that anyways. Luckily I got it and gotta put it back together now. So putting the gear back up together, it's pretty simple. It kind of goes one way, but there is a way you can fuck this up, right? So this, if you look at the gear, one side it doesn't go all the way to the end. So make sure that it goes upside down so you don't see that goes inside. It will go on either way, so you gotta be very careful. The easiest way to do it is to make sure that you see the notches. So there's a notch here and a notch down here, and then you just line those notches up and it falls in. So yeah, you gotta make sure that's going in that direction, because if you put it the other direction, it'll still work and run, but the movement won't be as smooth and you won't get your full 30-degree rotation. So finally, after all this troubleshooting, figured out it was that stupid gear inside here that I put in backwards. Once I put it all back together, put it back in. This thing ran perfectly fine, no more codes, no nothing, everything idles, and the rest of the car works properly now. I wasted all my time troubleshooting this. At least I got a new OCV valve out of it, and other than that, I was able to clean out that extra form-in-place gasket that I put in the top of the cam cap. It was a complete waste of time on my part. At least you guys know now how to diagnose some of the other things to figure out. Most of the time, 90% of the issues is usually this guy either failing or that filter right here that's clogged up as far as that 1349 code. My problem was just kind of unique to my stupidity. Anyways, I hope I didn't really screw up my engine or anything. It was completely like the timing was way retarded when I did this. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in on this troubleshooting of the VVTi issues I've had on this car, that 1349 code. Obviously it was my mistake when I was rebuilding that cam gear, the way I put it back together, but at least I went over all the kind of steps that you need to do as far as checking your OCV valve, checking your filter, and checking anything that's clogged that didn't allow oil to go through the cam gear. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to your channel, go ahead and subscribe to your channel, and I'll talk to you guys next time.